Ronnie, no pronouns given, coming on to Florida, this is what I've got on the call screen here, says that some Christians have come into contact with extraterrestrials, which is his explanation for angels. We'll hear what they have to say. Ronnie, you're on AXP. How are you doing?
Yeah, looking right now on my I'm on my line phone talking to you, and I'm looking at my cell phone. It was a book written by a man named Dr. Frankie Stranges, 1967 originally, and then 1972, and then 91, and then a man named Andrew Colvin reprinted his book in 2019. Dr. Stranges was a Christian minister, and in December of 1959, he was teaching or preaching at a church in Washington, D.C. A woman that worked at the Pentagon, her name was Nancy Warren, as a secretary, came and visited him and told him about some, strange things that were going on in the Pentagon there, dealing with extraterrestrial beings. And the next day, she got him into the Pentagon, and he met with a benevolent, extraterrestrial being that was interacting there. And it was the beginning of nearly 50 years of contact he had with this being. I'm scrolling right now the book, and it's just he approached this being not only just from a theological. Oh, let me just throw this. When he was in Bible school, like 10 to 12 years earlier, after World War II, he had a fellow student that was in the Army Air Force and during World War II, and he told him that there were times their craft were buzzed by UFO craft. They tried to tell the higher ups in the Army Air Corps, and they told him, well, first of all, we don't believe you guys, and second of all, keep quiet about it. And it also got him involved with studying ufology. And in 1959, this Christian minister wrote a book called Flying Saucer Rama.
So there's a really cool newspaper called the National Enquirer where you can also read stories like this, and also about how like Elvis is actually a secret bat person who works for the CIA to give us all AIDS and all sorts of other weird shit. Like, does any of this have any credibility, or is this just a man wrote some things in a book?
No, there were he was given photographs of these beings were very human-like, and I'm looking at them right now as I'm scrolling here in the book, and it was an Air Force photographer by the name of August Roberts. And,
right, you know Photoshop exists, though, and that photographs can easily be manipulated and made to look like anything.
Well, okay, I myself, I'm 67 now, but when I was 11 years old, I remember I had one experience of seeing UFOs. And then when I was 12 years old, 3 times, but I basically kept it to myself. And let's throw something else here. When I was 10 years old,
what does the U in UFO stand for?
Unidentified. That's what it means,
Right. Not alien, unidentified. So you saw some stuff that you don't know what it was. That happens to everybody. So why does that lend any credibility to any of this?
Well, it's, when you go into researching all of this, there was a man named Phil Schneider. He worked for the government, and he was an agnostic. And his video from 1995 or so, or before he was assassinated, about a situation that happened in Dulce, New Mexico in 1979, underground. Some type of battle with.
I think we're just moving. I think these are just more examples. I think we get your point, Ronnie. But I just want to first agree with you, because I see that in your call, in the explanation of your call, you just said that aliens could be the explanation for why some people claim to have angels visiting them, right? So you said it could be, right? So, yeah, I agree with you. It could be that. Do you also agree that it could not be that? Like, it's possible that that's not the explanation? Do you also agree with that? That this could be and it could not be, right?
Well, here's something else that I came across. There was an Italian man.
No, wait.
No.
I asked Ronnie, I asked a question. Can you answer my question? We said that angels, people claiming that they have been visited by angels, that could be explained by alien visits, right? But it's also possible that that's not the reason. You agree with me? Is it possible that that's not the reason? Yes or no?
I've as like,
that's a yes or no question, Ronnie.
I did not believe.
That's a yes or no question, Ronnie.
There was no life out there.
Ronnie, that's a yes or no question.
Yes. It's a very simple question. Actually, there's 3 answers you could give. You could say yes, no, or I don't know how to evaluate this, right? These are 3. You have 3 options, right? So is it possible? Okay, the question is, right, the fact that some people claim that they have been visited by angel, is it possible that the reason for that is not that they have seen aliens? Is that possible? Is the question? Is the question hard to understand? Do you want me to? Oh, it's possible. Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so what methodology do you now want to use to go about evaluating between these 2 possibilities? Because I agree with you, because in your question, in your statement, you said it could be angels. So I agree with you that it could be angels. So we have that possibility as an answer, and we have other possibilities as an answer as well. So how do we go about evaluating which one of these are better answers? Like, do you have a methodology that you want to suggest to us for us to go and evaluate these different options that we have?
That I don't know. I mean, it's like, when I was 11 years old, I saw 3 like white orbs in the sky, and they vanished.
We already gone that route.
Yeah. What are all the things? What are all the things that those white orbs could have been, Ronnie? One of them's aliens. What are all the others?
Besides that, I don't know. But other people have talked about seeing orbs.
That's the answer. That's the answer. I don't know. So I don't know what this was. And now you have a job that you can go look to try to figure out what it was. You can explore these options, or you can just say, aliens. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's probably aliens, So, like, which one of these is really more reasonable? To say, I don't know what this is, and leave it at that, and try to explore and figure out what it is, or just to assume that because you don't have any better explanation, it's probably aliens, and some guy who wrote a book one time that you can't verify the credibility of is almost certainly telling the truth. And this other person who said some wild claims that nobody else can back up is certainly also telling the truth. And like, there's this big global conspiracy to hide something, knowing that, government bureaucracy is really, really crappy at doing anything effectively, let alone hiding a massive intergalactic conspiracy. So like, you saw some lights in the sky and some dude wrote some stuff in a book. Nito Bandito. Where do you go from there?
Okay, that was when I was 11, 12 years of age. I saw something in the sky that looked like at that time, this is in 1968, I was 12 years old.
Ronnie, we're not denying it. We're not denying your experiences. Like, I think you think you were expecting us to say that, no, you didn't see that. No, you didn't have that experience. We're like just going to assume you saw. So we're past that. So if you're going to keep listing us the things you've seen, we're just going to assume you've seen those. So we're not denying it. So let's move past that. Okay, you saw so many UFOs, right? Now we're going to the next level. So you don't need to give us more examples when we're past that step. We want to see, now that you've seen these things, is it now good to assume that these are the same thing that other people have referred to as angels? Do you want to move to the next step, or do you want to keep staying at the first step that you keep on giving us a list of things that you've seen? Do you want to move on to the second step, or no?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So now we go back to that question. So because here's what I think happens, Ronnie. I think a lot of people just, when they could imagine something being true, like imagine that this could be the answer to this question, just by the fact that they could imagine it, that's reason enough for them that this is the answer, right? But that's not reason enough. Yeah, we agreed with you that this could be the answer, but you also agreed that the other answers are also possible. So you haven't thought about those other possible answers, but you have acknowledged that there could be other answers as well. So now we have to see how good is your answer is compared to all those other possibilities. Do you agree with that?
All right.
All right. So before we even do that, we have to evaluate what tools we use. So here's the thing. We have a claim. We have some claims here. And now we want to see if these claims are true or not, right? But before we even start, we have to understand what method are we going to use to evaluate these different claims. So before we even look at these claims, we have to look at our methodology. Do you agree with that?
All right.
Okay, great. So what is your methodology? Do you have a methodology? Do you have a tool that you use? So there's a claim, like let's forget this claim for now, right? Somebody comes with a claim, right? And you want to see how true this claim is, right? How much this claim matches reality. Do you have a set of step-by-step process that you use to figure that out, or not yet? It's okay if you say like, no, I don't have a methodology. I haven't thought about having a methodology. Do you have one? Have you thought about having a methodology or no?
No, but it's it's just like how come there's so many there seems to be ever increasing numbers of people talking about this stuff and everything now.
We don't know. We don't know.
I have several explanations. Ron, sorry, go ahead, Armin. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, Forrest seems to have a lot of answers, but me and you, we could say like, we don't know. But before we evaluate them, I want to get us our methodology right first before we go evaluate the reason. So you're saying, how come this is happening? My answer is like, I don't know. But before we go evaluate why this is happening, let's get this first part right first. Let's look at our methodology on evaluating when we go and check these out. Like you're saying, here's a question, like, oh yeah, that's a good question. I want to know the answer to this question as well. But I'm not going to start if me and you don't have an agreement on what the best method of evaluating these questions are. But go on, Forrest, if you have some explanation.
Yeah, I have a few, and but like first, I want to ask, like, Ronnie, do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you believe Bigfoot is real?
Yes, because
what about the Loch Ness Monster?
I had an experience in
what about the Loch Ness Monster?
August of 1966.
What about the Loch Ness Monster? Ronnie, I wasn't asking for your life story. I was asking you a yes or no question. What about the Loch Ness Monster? Do you believe that that's real?
I believe the possibility that it is real,
What about Mothman?
I lean towards that. Yes.
What about the Jersey Devil?
Yes.
What about Roland? What about Roland the Closet Goblin?
It's like I believe like there's other dimensions of time and space that this is
I'm not asking that. I'm asking if you believe all of these individual little things, and it's just things that people say, things that have no credibility to them, things that can't be tested or verified, just somebody saw a thing and they publish it on the internet. What happens to those people? They get a bunch of attention. They get noticed. They get recognized. They get talked about. There are whole conventions of people who say that they've been abducted by aliens, and they all gather together and they all have totally different stories, and they all feel very united and together talking about how they've all been abducted by aliens. There are Bigfoot hunting societies out there. Here in Oklahoma, there's bumper stickers that I see all the time. People saying they go out and hunt Bigfoot. Some of them are jokes. Some of them are not. There's all sorts of people who believe in all sorts of weird cryptids and whatnot, and they all get the same benefit from it, which is that they get some attention when they say it, and they get to feel special and unique. So, like, here's your options. People say things and make bad explanations for things that they can't explain. They come up with something new, and they get to be a part of a cool club, and they get to talk to each other about some cool thing. That's something that we can observe happening all the time. Or every weird cryptid and alien and demon and monster and boogeyman that anybody ever comes up with is probably true. And there's actually so much more to reality than what we know and can see with our own eyes. And just because something has no evidence for it, and just because we can't see or test or understand something, is no reason to not just assume that it exists. Like, do you see the issue with doing that?
Well, it's just like science, like 500 years ago, You know, they didn't know. They knew like metals like iron, gold, silver, copper. You know,
Right.
but you go back 500 years ago and say, what about the beryllium or magnesium or aluminum or titanium? These metals and everything, they existed, but science 500 years ago did not know they existed.
That's a great point, Ronnie. That is a great point. No, that's really good.
Yes.
What caused us to accept that all these other things that we didn't know about existed? What changed science?
These things were discovered.
Evidence. Evidence changed science. We gathered evidence for these things, and then we changed our minds. So what evidence, what testable, repeatable, observable, actual evidence do you have for Mothman, Bigfoot, aliens, Loch Ness Monster, all these other things that you're talking about?
You know, one thing is that there are entities, there's people behind the scenes that don't want us to know this and what have you.
How do you know that?
Where people have.
How do you know that?
It's just like Bigfoot. It's just like people coming across Bigfoot skeletons.
How do you know that, Ronnie? What's the question?
They come and they seize the skeletons and
how do you know that?
1966. If I lived to be
Ronnie,
120 years,
I'm going to ask you one more time, and then I'm going to move on if you can't answer a question. How do you know these things? You're saying things. You're saying big claims. I can sit here and say that there's any weird thing that exists in the world, and the government's covering it up. And the only reason why you don't know that I actually can fly and that I actually have night vision that built into my ears, that I can see things and I can pogo stick on my penis to the moon, is because the government has hidden all of the information about this. It doesn't make any of it true. How do you have any evidence for this? How do you know that these things exist and that the government's covering them up?
Well, does it take like me, having a flying saucer, to show to somebody, like that, or
that would be a great start. Is something that we can actually test and believe in. Because if you just say, "Here's this thing," and you don't know about it because the government's hiding it, then that's no different from saying any other. You can take aliens and Bigfoot and everything out of and put in anything else in that blank, and it means the exact same nothing. I have a shrink ray that I use to shrink the Eiffel Tower and put it in my pocket and wear it as a keychain. And you don't know that because the government quickly built a new Eiffel Tower and is hiding it from you, and they took away my keychain. How can you prove that wrong? And how is that any different from me saying, or from what you just said about how they hide all the Bigfoot skeletons and everything else?
Ronnie, can I ask a Ronnie question? Okay.
Yeah, by all means.
Do you agree with this statement? Just because something is possible, it doesn't mean that it's true. Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this, what I just said? Just because something is possible, it doesn't mean that it's true. Ronnie, are you there? Are you thinking about this?
May I ask you to this? Like, what?
No, you can answer Armin's question. You can answer Armin's question.
Ronnie, I asked you a question.
I don't know.
How about we do? Okay, well that's fair. So that's a fair answer. Okay, you don't know, but well, the answer is no. Not everything that is possible is necessarily true. So a lot of the things that you're telling us, you're saying that it's possible, right? But that's not good enough for you to go from possible to true. You need evidence, as Forrest said, and I want to encourage you to go and study the scientific method, right? Because what me and Forrest claim here is that the scientific method here is the best tools that we have right now, as of right now, to basically figure out what is true, to be able to separate what is true and what is not true with the most likelihood, like with the highest amount of possibility. Like we never know anything 100%, but the scientific method is the best tool for us to come up with the probability of something being true. And I would encourage you, we are saying that that's the best tool. I encourage you to go and study it. If you have time, go and see what is the scientific method and why do people think it is a better tool than all the other tools. Because we have the tools that are out there are intuition, right? Revelation, We have, actually that's and the scientific method. I don't know what else, what other tools that we have. We have revelation, we have faith, we have intuition, and we have the scientific method. These are the tools that people suggest, and I think you're going with the intuition tool. Like you're looking at the question, and you're looking at the answer possible out there, and because you're intuitively it seems like the right answer to you, you're just picking that as the answer. And every time we're trying to show you that this is not really a good answer, you are, instead of showing us evidence, which is what we require when it comes to scientifically evaluating whether something is true or not, your answer to us is as if we were telling you that this is not possible. You're giving us arguments that would make your answer just possible. But here's the thing, almost everything is possible. There are not that many things that are completely impossible, right? So something being possible is not that interesting. There are not many claims out there that you could make that would be impossible. So we are not here to listen to things that are possible answers. When we say something is true, we're saying it's justified to believe in it. So the probability of that thing being true needs to be a lot higher than you just showing us that it's a possible answer. And the only way to do that right now, as of right now, the only way to do that is with evidence and using the scientific method. So go look that up. Go look what that scientific method is and why it works, because it does work.
Yeah. One more thing I want to share with you. There was an Italian man named Giordano Bruno. He was born in 1548, and he came to the conclusion that the stars out there in the universe, this is in the 16th century, that there were planets around them like the Earth, and that there was life on that. And he was arrested by Rome in 1592, and he spent 8 years in prison. They tried to make him recant that heresy, and he on February 1st, 1600, he was executed, and he went to his death not recanting. That there was life out there. And then 32 years later, Galileo was put under house arrest because he taught that the sun went around the Earth instead of the Earth went around the sun.
I get it. I've taught this lesson before myself. It's an important lesson about how science works and how evidence works and how restrictive and oppressive churches have been and faith systems have been in the past. This is a great lesson. It has absolutely no bearing on anything that Armin just said. It sounds like you were just waiting for your turn to talk, because what he just explained is that you need evidence for these things. So yes, Bruno and Galileo did say things that they were oppressed for by the church. They had evidence for the things that they were saying, and they were speaking to the evidence that they had. And then later on, more evidence came out, and pretty soon the evidence became so large that the church couldn't withhold it anymore. And then everybody changed their minds because of the evidence. You haven't provided any of that. You're saying both men were right. So Bruno was right about there's extraterrestrial life out there back in the 16th century. We don't know that yet. It's very reasonable to assume that there's almost certainly extraterrestrial life out there because of the sheer size of the universe, but we don't know that for sure because we've never actually seen any. We have no actual evidence of any extraterrestrial life.
Okay. That there is
okay, but right, but that's all it is, though. It's a belief. So, like, if you ask me, is there extraterrestrial life out in the universe? I'm going to say almost certainly yes. Almost certainly there is. The universe is just too unbelievably big, and the ingredients for life are too common, and the conditions for life are too common for me to say confidently that the Earth is the only place that life exists in the universe. I agree with that. But I'm not going to say that there is certainly life in the universe outside of Earth until I have at least some evidence for it. I don't have to go see an alien walking around making pancakes. All I have to see is like a fossil, a microorganism, something that was made that doesn't look like a natural formation, like anything that indicates that there's some sort of life beyond us. That would be necessary for me to say that it exists. I'm not going to say it because of a matter of probability that it's certain until I actually have some evidence for it. So you're saying you lean towards believing. Neat. It's still just a belief. It's not anything that you can actually test or demonstrate. And then to take that belief that there's probably aliens out there and then extend that to, well, that also means that they have spaceships. And that also means that they're visiting Earth. And that also means that all the religious people out there saying they see aliens is also, or seeing angels, that's actually aliens. And also Bigfoot exists. And also, like, every one of those is massive, massive, massive leaps in logic away from just, yeah, it's statistically likely that there's probably something called an alien somewhere in the universe. Do you understand how those are very, very, very different things?
I think we already exhausted this call.
I think so too. Ronnie, like, we're going to move on to another caller because every time we ask you a question, we just get a story out of you. But like, I really hope you'll understand that, like, just because you can't disprove something doesn't mean that it's real. And just because somebody says something doesn't mean that it's real. And just because aliens might exist doesn't mean that there's all these government conspiracies around them. Like, these are all vastly different claims. And I encourage you to look into them. Like, actually do some digging here and then call us back. Okay.